Are we back on? Oh, okay. Hi, welcome back. Here we are. So we are going to discuss a Nicole Circle resolution with Mr. John Furman and Randall Kemp. You want to give us an overview and welcome is it CASA?
How do you say your last name?
CASA.
CASA?
Okay. Basically, the matter in front of you here is there is the subdivision Nicole Estates was built in 1997. The roadway was accepted, but the roadway and the easement that's on lot 5 were never formally conveyed to the city, to the town. So back in one of the August meetings, the CASAs came to us. They had applied for a building permit to add an addition onto the end of their home, and it encroached into the easement. And they had indicated that they had talked to a couple people in the town about 6 months prior to that, and were told that it was okay. They entered into design for the addition, and then when they applied for the building permit, they were denied because it was in the easement. So they came to us asking how to remedy it. At that point, we didn't have the answer, so we did some research and confirmed that the roadway and the easement were accepted but never conveyed. The planning board, through its revolving fund, retained Attorney Jakovic to research the rights of easement holders and to see what could or could not be done in the easement. And basically, because the easement was never conveyed, it was implied because it's shown on the plans that were approved and it's included by reference into the Lot 5 deed. So his assumption is that the addition can be built in the easement as long as it does not detrimentally affect the rights of the would-be easement holder from its intended use. And when you look at where the addition is going to be approximately 7 to 8 feet away from the center line of the easement pipe. That pipe is down about 12 feet. So if the pipe ever had to be excavated for whatever reason, we could not do so without damaging the home addition that was built there. So in the course of scheduling this meeting to discuss it with you, we've had conversations with Mark Reed from Heritage Surveys, and he has prepared a alternate easement plan, which basically keeps the majority of the easement the same as it was originally approved, but jogs it around the building addition. So what that does is that it takes the encroachment of the easement away. But what it does is that it doesn't help the fact that the house will still be the same distance away from the pipe. So there's a concern that even though the easement is getting reduced in width, we still would not be able to maintain our pipe the way that we would normally have done had the house not been there. So we have a couple options that we can talk about. The first is that we can accept the easement as presented and basically go through and accept that the pipe is as close to the house as it is, knowing that if we ever had to repair it for whatever reason, we would have to be responsible for relocating it further away from the house. We can accept the easement the way it's been, the revised easement the way it's been presented, and we could ask that the homeowners relocate the pipe to a location that's suitable where our intended use of it would not be affected, or we could just deny the use of entering into the easement because our intended use of it is detrimentally affected in the planning board.
Okay. So we have the 3 choices that we have discussed. Is there anything that you would like to discuss about those 3 choices?
Well, I have to say we weren't denied. The building permit just wasn't signed because the inspector was very unsure of the situation. I have to say I wasn't aware of all the things that John just mentioned. I spoke with Mr. Crowley last week, so I don't know how far back I should go with some of these items, but we feel that 99% of the time that pipe is probably going to be there for 100 years and you're not going to be repairing it. And if you do repair it, we were told you would go right next to it anyway. So the likelihood of you digging up the initial pipe is slim and very hard.
I would disagree with that. We
No, I talked to these two gentlemen, Randall and John Furman from the planning board, and I'm the one that suggested moving the pipe over. Since you're gonna have equipment there to move the foundation, to dig a foundation for your footings in your house, as you're gonna ask for, you could use that same equipment to move the pipe. What is it, 70 square pipe?
Yeah.
And there's about 24 feet on the other side.
The problem is the pipe is gonna be about 6 feet from your foundation. And the type of soil that's there is sand. And you start digging that sand, it's gonna undermine under your footings.
Okay, well, we did suggest going deeper with our foundation. We did talk about doing a couple different things.
But can I ask, why would you do that? Because that would be a lot more expensive than moving the pipe.
Again, we didn't explore those options. It was
Yeah.
something that was just discussed during the planning.
But we're talking about, tell me if I'm wrong, John, moving the pipe within that 30-foot easement we have there, hugging the opposite side more, and getting roughly a 15-foot barrier between your footings and the pipe. And that would be sufficient for the highway department to get in there at any time. Now, the pipe is roughly 12 to 13 feet down. You're gonna be going that way anyways, and you're probably gonna be exposing that pipe when you're doing your foundation. So my suggestion would be the cheaper of the two, and you can verify this with your own engineer, Mark Reed. Move that 7 feet of pipe, tie it into a new manhole, and bring it back to the old, where the existing pipe is behind your house, so you can continue that flow, and never have to worry about us going in there and digging that out, undermining that pipe, and undermining your foundation. Otherwise, I don't see this board allowing that pipe, if you don't wanna do that this pipe will stay exactly where it is, and you're gonna build a foundation lower on, we're still gonna interfere with your foundation if we ever have a problem. Because those are 20-foot sections, those pipes.
So, do you have a copy of the plan?
Well, the judge.
I mean, where are you telling us that you want to move this?
We'll move the pipe within that same footprint.
Right, but the one that's going right from the street, I mean, which sections are you talking
Your,
about?
your engineer would actually have to work through that. So what we basically want to do is maintain the distance that we have now from the pipe to the edge of the easement. We want to maintain that same distance. That would allow us to get in there and do what we have to do to fix the pipe if we have to. So your engineer would be able to work through that.
I just have a question. I don't look at these kind of plans very often. But as I'm looking at it, I see that there's just over 6 acres, and there's this easement to the right side of the house?
Going for that again.
Okay, and on the other side, there's nothing. So in order to avoid any of this problem, is there any way you could just put the addition on the other side?
Because there's driveways, there's a garage, you wouldn't be able to connect the house to, it just, it's not feasible to go on that side.
But could you come up here for a minute? I'm gonna show you, this is the opening right here. John, come on up. This is the opening, it's a 30-foot opening, your house is over here, okay? You're proposed to come over this about 6 feet, okay, onto this easement. The pipe is dead center, it goes down to the spillway. What we're proposing to do is move this over, you're gonna, the catch basins are in the street, I think they're right about here. Move the pipe over, hugging the left side, and get away from the center, so there's more room between the pipe and your foundation. And then bring it down here to a point where it's not gonna be anywhere near your house, and tie back into the existing line, and go back here. And to me, you're gonna have a lot of peace of mind by doing that. Because if there's ever, an earthquake's gonna open that pipe, because all they are heavy polyurethane pipes with a collar on it. If the ground shifted, pop out, and it would be sucking dirt, and it would be like you could get a sinkhole, or the mud would just have no place to go and back up on the property, and that could happen. I don't want it to happen that close to your foundation. If it happened when we moved the pipe, we wouldn't have a big difficulty getting in there and making those repairs. But right now, yes, the pipe might last 100 years, they do. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. But by shifting it over to this left side, will solve your problem and give us an access to take care of that when there is a problem that occurs. That's my suggestion.
Okay. There's no manhole right there.
Is there a catch basin up here?
No, it's way in the
Okay,
circle.
okay, yeah, there's a
It's way in
manhole.
the circle.
Okay, but everything over here, okay, they're picked up over here, this is the high point. It's picked up over here, comes to the main, it'll go down here. So this pipe can be intercepted here fairly easily at a 20-foot joint. And then diverted to this side here, and then come back into this area behind the house.
Okay, so are we gonna be expected to bear the cost of the new piping going in?
Yeah. This is not, we're not proposing this, you're proposing this.
Engineering drawing.
Yeah. Along the same lines too, is that right now the planning board has incurred costs for the legal opinion. That, you know, we have money reserved for town matters, not to resolve issues like this. So we would actually recommend that, you know, any of the costs with getting a town attorney, the cost that we already prepared to hire the attorney to give us the opinion be borne by the applicant as well.
We're not the ones that dropped the ball. And I spoke with Mr. Kemp, I spoke with the building inspector.
I actually
February 18th, I have it documented. I spoke with you.
a notebook that doesn't have it in there.
Well,
If
I
we're done
apologize.
looking at the plans, can we just everybody have a seat? Thank you.
The first time I heard of this project was when Ron Lauren talked to me about it approximately 2 weeks ago.
So, I guess, Heather, you have it all written down with the stipulations of this suggestion from the planning board are, A, accept the easement as provided on this preliminary form. B, move the pipe.
Property owner would be responsible for relocating the pipe designed and signed by professional engineer. Pipe must be moved as far from the building as possible. There must be a hold harmless clause. Document must be created to memorialize what's happening and must be signed by the applicants and notarized. There must be something written and consideration given to the manhole, I believe is Ed was.
Well, there'll be you'll need a manhole to make that intersection.
Okay. This would be managed by the planning board for paperwork and the easements. Once the planning board was satisfied, recommendations of the paperwork would return to the Board of Selectmen. And all legal fees and any other costs incurred by the town would be borne by the applicant.
And we talked about getting a good faith estimate together beforehand, so they would know.
Yeah.
You know,
We'll get to
so they can make a decision.
So two things that Heather mentioned that I mentioned but didn't actually elaborate on. So all this paperwork is going to take some time to basically pull together, sign, execute, go through the planning board process, the recommendations. So what we recommend is that we would ask the applicants for a document that could be signed and notarized and has a legal bearing to it that basically says we intend to follow through with all of this paperwork. And then once we get that, we would then send a recommendation to the select board to authorize the release of the building permit in advance of all the easements and stuff getting formulated. But at that point, there's no backing out by anybody. We have it, and you know it's enforceable. The other thing is the hold harmless agreement. If we do what I just talked about, what could happen is that they could actually start construction, and then with the pipe being in its place, wherever it is right now, and they could actually start building before we relocate it. So the purpose of the hold harmless agreement would be that while that home construction is occurring, if anything gets dislodged in the pipe and causes damage to the home because it hasn't been moved yet, the town will not be held responsible for that. So those are two very important.
Backed up into the street, that would all be part of it.
That's right. Yep. That's kind of something.
Any other comments from the board? Ed?
No.
Any other comments from any of the parties involved?
So when could we expect to receive an estimation of costs here?
I can call the attorney that we're using and see what he would be intending to charge for this. I would say that we try and have for the next planning board meeting on September 7th.
Now, when you talk to Marguerite, that's who you use, right?
It is, and I just spoke to him at 3 o'clock and none of this was discussed, so. I'm a
Well,
little
this is the
disheartened.
The first we're hearing of
We
this.
can't discuss this unless we're in a public meeting. This is what the first one is, since you called me. Okay, so we had the meeting, I pulled these people together to get what I said I would do and give you a remedy to this. Now, As far as the construction costs is concerned, Mark Reed is very familiar with these costs. He does it all the time. He's done it for us, he does it for other people. He can get the lengths and widths that need to be taken care of, and he'll give the copy to the planning board into you, so you have them. Okay, and I'm sure he can do that fairly fast. And also to Randall Captain,
So if we were to agree to all these items, how quickly can we move forward? Because we've already lost 6 weeks waiting.
Well, I think the intent is that if you provide us with the agreement that basically says you will follow through with all the conditions that we've met here, once we get that, I would present it to the planning board with a recommendation that it go to the SelectBoard and authorize them. You would need to, I guess, have some paperwork that you would release the building permit that the building inspector could rely on. So if you work on preparing the agreement for the September 17th meeting, I'll communicate to Mark what we think the cost for our legal attorney would be. And then if you came to that meeting with the executed agreement and a check, we would then write correspondence back to the Board of Selectmen, and they can release it at your next meeting.
Which is when?
September 23rd.
One question, when we get the agreement, I think our legal counsel should probably look at it.
well, he is our legal counsel. The lawyer that he's hired
Yeah.
is our legal counsel.
Okay, so you're going
Yeah.
to, okay, good. I don't know if you had a separate one on the plan.
No, it would be Attorney Jacoby.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're waiting for you. Can you get that together?
So hopefully that allows you to do what you need to do and the town still has the access it needs.
I did talk to Mark the day I talked to you and told him we were gonna try to get all this stuff together. And I did tell him about this meeting, that we get tonight. Okay?
Right, but I was told to go forward with the agreement that you have in your hand, so that was really a waste for me to spend those legal dollars.
I don't think so. I think the agreement's fine. I think it just needs to have a whole harmless agreement added to it.
So that's the only thing you wanted to add to that, and you're content with it?
You can put all the conditions in it.
Yes.
Which is addendum or something.
So it sounds like that's a base and you just have to add to it.
I don't think you'd waste any money with that. It's gonna be part of the agreement.
So can we get a copy of the minutes from this, or can I get the exact verbiage that you
Well, this is on
want?
TV, so you can get a quote, but you can tape this tomorrow if you want, but the minutes won't be ready.
They actually will be ready pretty soon, because
Okay?
I've been typing the whole meeting this time.
Okay.
So I can make sure that the attorney has the correct verbiage that you're looking for.
Can you take Mrs. Casa's information so that when we have the minutes available, we can get them to her so she has
Yes,
the
if she
right
signs
verbiage?
into this lovely sheet right here and just puts her email on the
John,
side,
would it be
we'll
helpful
get it up to her.
for Chipotle to talk to their attorney?
It probably would. Yes.
Okay, and which would save you from explaining and we're explaining, these two people are.
And I think that they did connect, so I did ask our attorney to reach out to him, so
Okay, good.
they may have connected already.
And
We're gonna rely on you to make sure all stuff we talk about gets transferred to the attorney.
You don't need any motions or votes. Thank you very
John.
much.
Thank you. Mrs.
I need this stuff back.
Thanks, John, Randall.
Unless you want to talk about other
Would that
ones.
be my copy, or is that your only copy?
I think this is our only one.
Can you email me a copy, or
I
make
will.
me a copy for you?
I will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, can you give Heather your copy of that? I'll email you, here, a copy.
Thank you. No. No. All right.
Well, have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. John.
All right, moving along. We are on, can I skip past your, okay. On 6.6, a request from the police chief to utilize the current time cards for the police officers. Chief Sylvan, are you here for that reason? Or-
I am.
Okay. So at last week's department head meeting, the police chief raised concern that he had over 150 time cards that had already been printed with old time materials. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. And would like to use them up before switching to the new time card that has been, we're transitioning to as a, on recommendation from an audit. And so he has old ones. We want him to use new ones that we approved last week, and he would like to use the old ones first.
Well, that's not entirely accurate.
Okay.
First of all, I wasn't consulted at all about the development or effect that this new format would have on my department or the way I process payroll or do time cards. Police department has customized time cards that have been in use for decades. They address evening shifts and day shifts. This proposed one says morning and afternoon. We work around the clock on weekends, holidays. There's no provision in this for holidays. I process payroll every week. This proposed sheet doesn't fit my needs. And again, I wasn't consulted about it in any way. There's a number of issues that I have found that I don't believe that's going to be practical. So what I need to do is continue to use the time cards that I've been using for decades. It's not broke. It works for me. I see no reason to allegedly fix it and come up with an entire new format.
Do you happen to have them with you?
I don't.
Okay. I just want to look at them. But
So
there might be one in the folder I can look at.
At the last meeting, Heather misstated to you that these time cards that the police department uses are just simply photocopies. They're not. They're cardstock cards.
That you copy onto the paper.
And I photocopy for the accountant's office and treasurer's office and for the SelectBoard or whoever wants to look at them.
Do you keep the originals in the police?
I maintain the originals at the department.
Oh, I
I
see,
thoroughly
I
go
see.
through payroll on a weekly basis. I don't, even though we do a bi-weekly payroll, I don't do it every 2 weeks. I can't. I got people working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For me to go back 2 weeks previously and try to track everybody, because I look at everybody's time on every shift, compare it to the schedule, and thoroughly evaluate the accuracy of everything.
In your opinion, there's no way to make the new one work for the way you need it to?
No. I have specific needs, and I have a lot more than 150 cards. I have stacks of cards. I get them pre-printed, and I get them by the case. And so both police and dispatch use this style of card. I see no reason to change it. When Heather represented to the board last week that they had problems where people were altering cards and changing things, and so there was a need to come up with a universal card, that wasn't the police department that was being referred to. Ours is working fine. That reference happened at this building.
Do you pay for the cards every, like, you buy a certain number of them?
Yes.
Is there a cost savings if you just took 2 and photocopied them onto a piece of paper, and that one piece of paper was for that one person each week? Do you know what I mean? Instead of buying the cards over and over, is the paper cheaper and the ink?
I never compared it.
I'm just thinking, in my head, I'm picturing printing all of this stuff on cardstock, and if you already have the copies anyway, then we could.
Yeah, we use one card for each week.
Right, that's what I'm saying, if you had
this
2 cards on one
format
paper.
Right, so then, what would it take, whereas I do the payroll every week, then that means I have to collect all those sheets
Oh, and then some-
and then redistribute them again, and then get them all back again. Some things that are proposed create more work. I got enough.
As far as printing costs, it's a lot
I just wondered,
less expensive to
Okay,
go out
sorry.
and print a commercial.
just asking.
Okay, so Heather, while you were out, we were talking about this. The time card that you propose versus the time card that the chief is using, what does the one, in your opinion, that the chief is using doesn't do that we need to do with this new card, or is there nothing different?
There was just we're trying to get everyone on the same one. The reason we didn't with the highway is because the highway takes from different accounts.
Right.
They have about 4 or 5 different accounts that they actually cite to, and it was, the accountant and the treasurer who had asked to stay the same. We had talked about the time card at the last department head meeting. Following the department head meeting, I sent out an email memorializing what we had discussed, and then after the last Board of Selectmen meeting, after I went to the PPD to approve the time cards, it was sent out again.
Where on your time cards, Chief, does it account for vacation and sick time?
Officers write that in the spaces on the far right. There's also a space for column, you'll see this marked CT.
Yep.
That stands for comp time. In the labor agreement, there is a provision for comp time. That may come back right now due to budget cuts. I haven't allowed comp time to be issued, but it may be back. There's also roll call pay, there's field training officer pay, there's officer in charge pay, there's all kinds of stipends that get written into these extra spaces that are applicable to my evaluation and confirming what people are being paid.
Heather, on the card this is the Southampton, okay, the overtime vacation, and this is the chief's card. So overtime and comp time, there's only 2 columns in what the chief is using now versus multiple over here. It almost sounds like the new card has more available options than the old card.
I'm trying to.
Yeah.
So the only difference here is AM and PM. That's basically the same. Morning, afternoon, AM, PM. That is the same. Then you
Well,
have.
not necessarily, because we work nights also.
There's 3 shifts that these cards have to cover. This is only basically 1 shift.
But
How do you
we
cover
could
3
change
shifts
the
on here?
lingo on ours if we had to. It's supposed to, the only purpose of it having it split on our thing is, for instance, if someone came in earlier in the day, they left, for whatever reason, they came back. It's just the idea of splitting up the day for 2 different sets. So theoretically, an officer wouldn't work more than 2 shifts in a row. He's not gonna work 24 hours a day. That would be 3 shifts.
It's happened.
So Heather, what
Okay, you do a cover sheet with these 2, am I right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is
And
the
the
cover
treas-
sheet different than everybody else's cover sheet, or? is
Well, I have all kinds of checks and balances in place. I also have a separate sheet that is prepared that identifies specifically all the overtime, all the vacation time, all the personnel time. I also have sheets that the officers do when they have to come in for overtime to help, an overtime documentation sheet to help me track everything. It's very difficult tracking all these officers and dispatchers around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm not there to be there firsthand to know what they're doing.
The treasurer and the accountant like the cover sheet. It is different than the
Okay.
others,
But
but
they have no
they're,
problem.
They don't have any
they're very
problem.
happy with cover
Let
sheet.
me ask you this, but the cover sheet is the template for the checks. Right.
I actually
But they
don't,
go, I mean, they look at all this other stuff too, but the template is what Dave writes down for each person what his grand total is. Am I right? Am I right?
I don't know if that's where they pull the info or if they go to the individuals. I imagine it's the cover. You have to ask Donna.
The reason I'm saying this is that because the highway department was unique, there's several different line items. This is somewhat unique because it's covering 7 days a week and 3 shifts on this time card. And I don't think we should have that on the other time.
My cover sheets have a complete breakdown that mirrors the time cards. It lists in separate items under each employee's names,
The total for the week.
and including their overtime, their vacation time, their comp time. Everything is broken down and detailed on that cover sheet.
Together.
Yep.
That's not gonna work with this,
Right.
unless
Why
you
not?
cut his works because he has this card and he gives it to them, they fill it out and he checks it. And then he puts the 2 of them together and he makes 1 sheet. If he's using this, then he'd have to either have them hand it in and give it back and hand it back and give it back, or he'd have to cut this in half and have them use this as a card. I mean, I understand your point, Chief. I get it. I'm looking at it and I can, in my head, I can see what you're doing with the cards and how it all works out. I understand probably the concerns of wanting to put everybody on the same system and make it work. I wonder what specific problems there are with these time cards in the police department, because maybe that would sway my decision or my opinion.
Well, what value, or what specifically is it that has caused this necessity to have them all universal?
I think there was a recommendation from the auditors to have a universal time card that was the same throughout departments. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, so
But for
in order,
for what purpose, for filing, or?
I think just for general record keeping and checks and balances, I mean, I know you have your own over there and nobody's doubting that. I think for the overall record keeping of the town, they're recommending everyone have the same time card, but
And it's easier for us when we're looking at it, when we have to go to get vacation, sick, personal time off, it's easier for us to get it off of, if we're always looking at the same place.
So a standardized card is, somebody going through it will see the same thing every time.
Right.
The difficulty is it's not gonna be standardized because of all the variety of things that the police officers and dispatchers are doing.
I just meant the columns and the headings. Now, when you print this card, is it double-sided?
It's printed on one side, but the back side is used for additional information.
Donald, one of the questions the board had a few minutes ago was, when you guys enter in sick, vacation, holiday, all the information, do you obtain it from the cover sheet or from the individual time cards?
Both. Because like the cover sheet that I use and other departments use, it lists the breakdown of the sick, vacation, and you list the date and the number of hours on the cover sheet, and then you have the time cards, as backup. The way the police print out currently, he'll put down, vacation, say 24 hours, but then I have to go back to the time cards, which are copied and attached, to get the actual dates, so that I can enter them in properly into the attendance, to the payroll. So the dates aren't on the way it is now, and I have to look at the calendar or the time card, the way the dates, and pick out the date. If it was Thursday, okay, that was the 28th.
However, nothing's gonna change, because if you use the new recommended format of a time card or my existing time card, that cover sheet is gonna remain the same, so.
you still have to go back and do the checking.
Yeah.
No matter what.
You gotta check the cover.
It
sheet
doesn't
as
matter
well
how
as
the
back.
information comes in, you still have to do the checking.
Yeah.
What are the disadvantages of not, what are the advantages and or disadvantages of not changing the police department? Other than having to do the check back and forth, which we have to do anyway. I mean, if we didn't change, I don't know.
Are you having that difficulty with the highway? They're using a different format. Because of all the different line items. the way you use
Right.
it.
Right. No. I mean, it's,
You wanna
it's
read
time
through with
consuming
this?
no matter which way you do it, but.
I mean, the only reason I'm leaning to letting them keep these cars is that he's got 3 shifts, he's got differential, he's got, various times of overtime. People come in, they're working over because of whether it's a DWI or something. He's gotta count for it, and he's gotta verify it, and he's gotta justify it in his own mind before he lets them out. He says his system is better for him. You're saying you could work with it, or you can't work with it?
I don't care.
No, I'm just looking for an honest opinion. Does it make a big difference to you?
I mean, I think.
I know we're trying to standardize everything, but sometimes, he's working 7 days a week, and he's posting 3 shifts. Where most departments are working 1 shift, never working weekends for the most part, and that's much easier to track and deal with.
Mhm.
All I'm saying is that he's got an issue of, he wants to verify and track.
It's the same with the fire too.
Yeah. Is the fire department different?
Yeah, they're doing, yeah.
They have a different time card than this?
Well, because all the guys don't come in, if they just do a call, or if they're on
What sheet are they
standby,
gonna use
they
now?
don't come
Their
in.
original? Are they using their original, or are they switching to this?
Currently, well, this past pay period, they didn't use
didn't use the new one.
That's just the chief did for the salary.
I guess it just seems to me that if you have these three major departments, the highway department and the police department and the fire department, and they all have to schedule people differently, it's different than scheduling within the town hall. And if they have a time card that works for them in order to track their information, and it doesn't cause any more frustration than normally tracking in your office, then I don't see why we can't just let them.
Another factor that's important to me is that these cards are like, sort of like a 3x5 type card, they're actually a little bit bigger than that. I have metal filing cabinets specific for these cards, and I retain those for a certain time period before we rotate them and destroy the old cards. So in my office, I retain 3 years of back cards that I can easily access anytime there's an issue or a question, whether it's accumulation of time by one of the officers or dispatchers. So I can go to that and easily index the time cards as needed. If we go to a long paper format like that, I'm gonna have to change my whole filing system of the time cards.
Why do you even have to scan them in? I mean, personally, I think that's the worst reason to stay with the card, because technology-wise, we've got the scanners, but a couple opinions. I think the new time slip gives more information because it allows you to put a date in there. But I'm with the other two. I don't see a reason to change it if it's working. You know, I guess one comment: if we got the fire, we got the highway, we got the police, all do 24/7.
Couldn't we have the same
They
card
should
for
have
those
one
three
card,
departments?
yeah. I know it.
Maybe we could.
You know what I mean? Then you have just two, then you're
But
looking
the
at
highway
two.
still has so many different
Line
cards.
items.
That's the thing, is they have, the way their card is completely different because of the different, you know, you've got park, and you've got water, and you've got overtime, and winter roads, and general highway.
But there should be one time where I'll just
Heather?
make good
I was
decisions.
gonna say, if the chief is comfortable with having the cards pre-ordered, you can pre-order anything you want, have anything pre-printed, so why not, when he runs out of his 150, have that format printed on the card, so it's his 3x5 card, it works for his filing system, but the information works for us, and it's more detailed information. So we can have the same system, same thing going, nothing changes, just the card looks slightly different. And it still can be pre-printed. Printers can print whatever you need them to print.
Chief?
As I said, I have custom stipends that I track on our card. My existing card works for me, it's been fine for many years. I've customized that card to our needs. I just don't see the legitimate reason to upset the apple cart and just change this for the reasons that have been stated.
So I think we can continue to talk about the same things over and over again, or we can make a decision as a board.
Let's make a decision.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like standardization. I think it's good. It gives more information, but I don't think this is something that's not working, so I don't have an issue with saying let's let it stay the way it is.
I mean, I don't want to get too deep into this, but eventually down the road, there's going to be some kind of electronic
Yeah.
devices. We all need to be on the same page in that, and making sure things are going to work. But I can see that happening 1 or 2 years down the road. That, you know, it's all going to be shelved, and we're going to be dealing with our time cards on a keychain. Okay. But that's for another day.
So is there a motion on the table?
I make a motion that the highway, police, and fire stay with their current way of monitoring their payroll, as long as the cover sheets are pretty much standard.
And as long as it meets the payroll needs.
Yes.
And is that just for the hourly employees?
That's just, I just said highway,
But just hourly employees, because all the other ones are salary and they.
correct. Hourly employees.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Do you want to do your performance evaluation before we go into executive session? Oh, how about open time for the public? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, so that's done. And I'm gonna skip the executive session until the end, so that once we are done, okay. So now, we're gonna go into the town administrator's 6-month performance evaluation. First, we'll have a 5-minute break. We will resume our meeting at 8:10, so you have 6 minutes. Ready, go. Ready?
Yep.
It's 8:12 and we are back from our break. The next item on the agenda is the 6-month performance review of Town Administrator Heather Budrewitz. So everybody had the form. Everyone's looked it over. Everyone has scored Heather and made comments. I guess we will start at the beginning at number 1, and the board can make any comments they wish to make. There's also a letter, do you have one, John? From Heather.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay. Outlining her accomplishments in the first 6 months and the goals that she has for herself to complete over the next year or so.
I make a motion to review these tonight and then talk about next week's goals.
Okay.
That's all. I haven't had a chance to.
You want to make a motion to do that?
No,
Okay.
just put it under
Okay.
town administrator next week.
All right, so I will start with number 1, the job performance, and that is, she performs her responsibilities as appropriate for the position. I noted that she is very organized, she's adapted very well to the job and its duties, she's able to wear multiple hats and multitask very well. I think she's doing a great job. When I need something, I get it very quickly, and if she doesn't have the answer for me, she finds out how to get it. Would anyone else care to comment?
I have similar things. Do you want to do the scoring?
I think we can just keep going and.
Okay, well, I think she's done a good job in front of the Board of Selectmen with issues that come up on a day-to-day basis, and I'm happy with that.
John?
Yeah, I think job performance, because when she came in, I was on the hiring committee, so for you folks. And I wasn't sure. I thought her experience was a little light, but her energy and her, intuitiveness, if that's a word, was going to show up in her performance. I think it did. I think she took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and wasn't frightened off by any of the issues that we had, even though we informed her. So I think she's done a great job on that overall.
Next, we have job knowledge, and I understand that she has a clear understanding of procedural and departmental requirements. She's very enthusiastic about knowing the appropriate way to handle a meeting or to file paperwork or to fix problems. She also attends as many professional development opportunities as she can. Every week she's somewhere else, and she's always willing to learn and ask questions and find answers.
My comments on number 2, job knowledge, is that she has a good working knowledge of the job and what's needed to be done.
I guess my point of view is to go with the comment I made before. I thought her job knowledge was going to be a little light, but I think she's proven that either she knew it and I didn't know that she knew it, or she knew where to get it and she comes up with the information. So, yeah, I'm happy with that.
Excellent. We have personnel management. So Heather is in charge of coordinating all the department heads, which she does through department head meetings on a monthly basis. She does well, I think, managing those groups of people. She promotes a very positive working environment, although I think that some attention should be given to the tone in which she speaks sometimes while managing. It can be taken out of context. It can be sometimes a little you can hear frustration in her voice. However, the nicest way to say is sometimes you don't sound like you're talking very nicely to someone, which is something that Heather and I have talked about one-on-one in the past anyway. But I think as far as the personnel management, I think she does a great job, but just needs to kind of think about that tone occasionally.
my feelings about the personal manager she met and the needs of what's outlined in personal management area.
I think she came in and that was probably her biggest challenge, of personnel. And it's not so much management, because she doesn't manage them, she coordinates them and she coerces them and she gets them to work fluidly together. So I think where the people are now, at least from what I heard, she's doing a great job of doing that. And from your point of voice, I think she approaches everything at full speed. And I think that's where it comes off. And I think it's well-meaning, but I agree with you. Sometimes it comes over as maybe a little high.
Fiscal management, she,
Sorry, what was that?
fiscal management,
Fiscal.
number 4. I underlined a lot of things. She manages departments within the allotted budget. She's introducing cost-saving measures, albeit I don't like not having paper towels in the bathroom. We're saving money there. I think there could be a little more attention given to searching out and figuring out grants. And I don't know if I don't know a lot about that because they're not coming at me. I know she's very busy, and so to try and research that stuff at this moment in the first 6 months is probably time consuming, but going forward it would be great if we could find out if there's anything out there for us. She did go through a review of the department fees already. What else have you done to save money? I think she's right on top. She did the whole Proposition 2.5. She took the whole thing on within the first 6 months and tried to figure out how to help the town in that way. And I'm not sure that would have happened if she was not in the position. So I think fiscal responsibility is at the forefront of her agenda.
I also believe she met the physical management part of the scoring here, but I also feel she worked very hard to bring all the departments into the major revisions of a new budget for this year because of the necessity
Fiscal management being chair of the finance committee, and I'm looking at 6 months that she was here, which is a very short time period. I think she just jumped right in where we had nobody before that had any inkling of the fiscal responsibilities of the job. She just jumped in and worked with us on the finance committee and all the department heads, the accountants, treasurer. So I think for the first 6 months she did a superb job on the financial end of it, and I think got to give her credit for pushing this budget process forward along with the finance and accounting.
Number 5 is time management, and I wrote, I have no complaints. I know that she's busy at every minute of the day. There's nothing that I'm looking for that I don't have, which leads me to believe she's managing her time pretty well.
I agree with that.
I don't really have a grasp of her time management, although everything's prepared when we need it, so I'm happy with it.
The next is communication. And again, Heather holds the department head meetings, and at each one she tries to educate and teach the department heads about something else. Each one is focused on a certain topic. One suggestion, and I did some talking to department heads and people in other departments, and one suggestion that I heard was when we have meetings at the Board of Selectmen, often if something involves one particular department head or one particular department, it would be helpful if we could send out a brief memo, either coming from the Board of Selectmen or from Heather, that says A, B, and C happened at the meeting, not what happened the whole meeting, just this is what happened pertaining to you, so that people are not sprung at the 10th hour that there's something going on that they might need to know about. So I'm hoping that going forward, if something were to happen, say with the highway department that maybe Randall didn't know about at that moment, we could just send out a brief memo underlying, stating what happened and keeping them abreast of any situations.
Well, there's a tremendous improvement in communication between our office and the administrator's office and the various departments. I see that, I hear that, and I feel there's a better understanding of what we're trying to do. I'm also very happy with Heather holding these bi-weekly or weekly meetings?
They're monthly right now.
Monthly meetings, all departments to be added in to know what's going on and how to help implement these changes and answer questions and get back to them. I'm very pleased with that.
And the communication to me here is a double-edged sword. I agree with what folks are saying. I think where we were 6 months ago, where we are now, is a tremendous difference in a positive way. I think the other side is, from what we've learned in the last few meetings, is we need to communicate a little better with some of the stakeholders. And not necessarily it's Heather's fault, it's part of us too. I think we just need to be more cognizant of that as we go forward.
Number 7 is teamwork. I would say Heather is definitely a team player. I can't imagine there's anything that comes into her office that she is not a part of, whether it's actually a job duty in her job description. If somebody brings it to her, she's going to be the first one to act on it and find out how to get everybody to work together to figure out a solution.
I go along with that.
Problem solving is number 8. I'd say that Heather's always looking for a solution to any problem. I think one of the things she says most to me when I'm in her office is that, you know, we make a lot of decisions and she makes a lot of decisions, and they're not always the most popular choices, but the fact is that her job is to come up with every possible solution to each problem, not one. And so I think she's very good at looking at all sides of a situation and coming up with any solution that there could be.
I think she's done a very good job in problem solving. She's not perfect, but, you know, she is trying to find answers and give the best answer she has, and she'll find the answer and give it to people, which I find is very important.
Yeah, I think she does a lot of great research. I think she delves into it. She's got the energy behind it, and like I said, it's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect, but I think it's heads and tails above where we were. So I commend her on that.
Next is creativity and initiative. I mean, I'm not sure how creative you can get in the town administrator's office, but as far as initiative goes, I think Heather's willing to do anything and everything to get the town of Southampton where it needs to be. We just talked about the time cards, which was something that she worked closely with Donna and Vicky on, and also the adoption of the purchase order system, so that there's some fiscal responsibility and general knowledge of, you know, what's going on in all departments. I wonder if it would be helpful to reach out to department heads if she hasn't already and just say, you know, what are we not doing as a town that would be helpful for your individual department, and then maybe take those ideas and go somewhere with them in your spare time.
I agree with it.
Yeah, I think ideas just pop up all the time when we have an issue that she's able to say, what about this, what about that? And that's a great asset to us.
Number 10 is above and beyond, and that would be performing tasks that are outside the normal scope of her work position. I'm pretty sure she goes above and beyond every day. She regularly attends any and every meeting outside of normal working hours to ensure she's up to speed with what's going on in the town and other departments. She's always in the know about what's going on. One example of that is recently with the budget cuts and the transportation and decisions by the school committee to charge for busing. A parent came in and the Safe Routes to School project came out to the school to do a site visit, and Heather was right there to make sure that she knew what was going on. So I think she's doing a great job doing more than what we expected.
And please.
I think a perfect example of above and beyond is giving her a formal evaluation, and she's typing as we speak. Who else would do that?
And number 11 is an individual goal. And so Heather, in her note to us, gave us a whole long list of goals for herself. I think it's kind of funny that my goal, one of the goals I wanted for her, was the construction of a new website that was more user-friendly, and it's number 1 on her list. So I know that she's been working really hard at researching websites and figuring out one that would work well for us, that we could mirror maybe from another town, and working closely with John Fitzpatrick. So I think, you know, going forward within the next year or so, if she could help us to get a new website up and running, and maybe that each department or committee could actually manage their own page so that less of the work was on Heather and more that group's responsibility, I think it would work out well for us.
I agree with that. But I haven't read it yet, I'll read it, so, and we can talk about it further. But I have some comments.
Ready, go.
Heather, I know it's only your first year, and these, don't take these wrong, these are things that I'd like to see worked on and developed over the next year or two. We need to figure out some way of writing some of these grants, whether it's just for the town as a whole, or when grants are there, department heads are made aware of it, and to evaluate these grants with them and start seeing if we can go after some of these grants. Because in years past, I know I did a lot of my own grants, but I don't see that at too many radars right now, and I'd like to see it more on radars to get special projects that might not be able to come here unless somebody is getting involved with some of these efforts. And case in point, the second half of Larrabee Field, I mean, there are grant programs out there, and we can start on that. There are highway programs, and there's projects out of, I don't think it's called mass housing anymore, but there's grants that we can look at with Pioneer Valley Planning and other state agencies that we should start putting our attention on, especially with the situation with our lack of funds. I'd also like to look into regional, some of our animal control facilities, see what other towns are doing, if we can work them together, and see if we get cooperative efforts in these areas. And thanks to you, showed me a list of 20 towns and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to see. And some of those other towns are looking for some of the same things. So if we could start at least communicating for that and see if there's some kind of a option here. I would also like to look into regional health agent and any other options that we could consider with other towns to share some of these costs and to move forward and make us more efficient. Look into more funding for maintenance of the parks, through grants or for talking community preservation fundraisers or something, but we have to do something. There's an inappropriation of funds to maintain what we currently have, and I think we should see if there's some way of trying to bring this to a better solution than throwing some money at it that's not even close to dealing with the problem. Look into regionalization with our department, conservation, to see if there's, I know they're looking for an agent to help them move ahead and do evaluations out there, and I'm sure, like several other towns in the area, they share a conservation agent. Maybe that's something we can look at. Also look into sharing engineering service. I mean, there are some towns, they're probably in Franklin County, but they do share an engineering service, and a lot of times it's stuff that's been engineered for other towns that could be applicable to us and save us a lot of money. And computer support. I'm an advocate of computer support. I don't think other than the knowledge that some people here have, we don't have the core computer support to go to assist us when we have a problem or something that comes and bites us. And also, there are certain grant writing services out there that we should entertain too if they're beneficial and they're cost savings to us. And one of my last thing is see if there's ways to improve funding for the Norris School to help improve the major cuts they absorbed this year, and see if there's anything out there like pothole funds that we can. Pothole funds. They call them pothole funds in the school department that they apply for every year. But if we can get behind them and help them support and go after some of this money and address some of the things that were cut, maybe it'd be helpful. Those are just some of the things that I'd like to see worked on. That's all.
I'm pretty sure that's gonna fill up your next 6 months then. The one thing I have, and you have it as number 5, is to work on the budget process more. And you've got work with DLS, finance, treasurer. I'd like to see us bring in early the Hampshire Regional and the Norris School folks. I think Linda Summers has also said something about that. I think it's important if we can get HRHS in on this process early, we can sit down with them and talk to them. They'll help us a lot. As you know, they're our largest percentage of the budget.
Overall, I just want to say, going in my first year on the board and not having the support I needed as a new selectman, and now going into my second with more support than I know what to do with, is really helpful. It's, you know, I know in the interviews I said I need somebody who's gonna be able to help me, and at this point, 6 months in, I can't even tell you how much she has helped and taught me, so I'm really happy and really pleased with the job that she's doing.
Anything I've ever asked for, she got me in a timely manner, and was very helpful in many of my decisions.
And as the former chair of the selection committee, I want to thank you for making those so damn good. Great job.
Now, is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, I just want to comment a couple things. On grants, I actually receive a grant alert every week. We've been working very closely with a resident in town who actually writes grants for a living. And we hooked her up with the library last week, so they just applied for a grant. One of the issues the libraries have in applying for grants is that their friends of the Friends of the Library are not a nonprofit. So we are working on establishing them as a 501(c)(3). I went to a meeting last week and we had commented on that again. That, you know, if there's anything they need help from us as a town for them to become a 501(c), they could let us know so that they can establish their nonprofit status so that they're eligible for more grants. That would be very helpful to them. But in the meantime, the person who does grants, she's a town resident, she's fantastic, she's invested in the town, she's happy to help us in any which way. She's been working with Randall too whenever we've had any grants come up. But, you know, sometimes there's lulls in the grants and sometimes there's not. So right now there's not a lot going out there. There were weeks where we were seeing 5 to 10 grants posted new every week, and right now I think this week there was 3. So we are paying attention to them, we are working closely together to see what's out there.
Would that be the same situation with Council on Aging, their Friends of the Council, their status?
You know, I don't know, I think it comes, nonprofits always usually have more options out there for grants than those who aren't nonprofits, but it also depends on the topic. Like, the libraries, sometimes there's just more stuff out there. We can look into it, we can see.
I'm just saying that I know they have Friends of the Council on Aging, and I don't know if that would benefit them.
We can do a general search. On the computer support, since I finally filled the position for my administrative assistant, Art, who was assisting as a volunteer, has moved over to our IT person full-time as a volunteer IT. We can give him whatever title we'd like to give him as a volunteer, whatever will make him stay. But he's been doing a great amount of work for us and looking into stuff. We have to upgrade a few computers this year, but otherwise, generally, we're in good shape. We've been working with Joel's company, which name I am, Northeast IT, as needed, and they've been very helpful. They're helpful to even take a phone call from me going, oh my God, what am I doing? So it's been phenomenal with that. We had a couple issues earlier in the fiscal year, but I think we're beyond that now. We've got things pretty well situated. The server's good, the backup's good. We get antivirus support, which is good. We have a few more XP units we're working on upgrading. We're just deciding whether we're going to go with the refurbish or just keep the same unit and simply upgrade the software, because right now they're not.
Are we doing third-party storage? In other words,
we're not yet, but we're working on it. I've been communicating with Kim, who is the IT director for Norris and Hampshire Regional, and we've been bouncing off ideas to see if that was an option. I also spoke with John Lumbra over at Holyoke to see if, you know, we could always do it that direction as well. So we'll keep looking and see what our options are. Right now, my biggest concern is getting the computers off XP, because those have no security backup or anything right now.
No support either.
how many of those do you have that?
We have less than 5. We've been, you know, as we've come across things that were stashed.
Are they the very older ones?
Not really, actually. When we moved over to this building, my understanding is a lot of the computers we purchased them were kind of refurbished already, but they're generally in good shape. There's tons of memory on them, speed's great, everything's good. The only problem is that we're running on an old operating system. So we're upgrading as we're going. As far as the other stuff goes, we're working on, I'm happy to do the regionalization research. We got a lot of that information already out there, and there's information on DLS website and a few other ones. And I have more goals in there, but you said you wanted to discuss them next week.
Just so people have time to read your letter.
Oh,
I didn't have time to read it, just gave it to me tonight.
I apologize for my biography.
Great. Well, thanks, Heather. Nicely done.
Do we have questions?
Sure.
What's your sense of where you are here after 6 months and where you thought you'd be and where you want to be?
Sometimes when you get into things, you don't really know where you're entering, so you can't always assess until you get into something.
Yeah.
Where you're at, and for me, my environment was constantly changing once I arrived, and it's still kind of changing to a certain extent. I would say it's only started to settle out recently.
Did you give her yours?
You have a comfort level though?
Oh, everything's very comfortable, yes. I'm excited for liquor renewal season. It's actually my favorite time of the year. Of course, we only have, let's see, 7 plus 5, I
Have we
think.
decided to change the fees on those, or talk about that?
I can put it on the next meeting.
Because I thought it was pretty low compared to.
We can
most
put it on
meetings.
the next meeting. We have fees, we have Randall's performance review next time. We have a few other things on the 23rd. Also, the 23rd, the next question is whether the board is hopefully all, or at least half of you available to do a presentation for the Historical Commission to receive a grant from a couple of the congressmen who would like to present.
On the 23rd?
On the 23rd,
Aren't we
prior
meeting?
to the meeting, so it would be at 5:30
What day?
on Tuesday. So the next meeting,
Is next
before,
Tuesday.
not next week, the week after.
Are you off next week?
We're on the bi-weekly schedule right now.
I can say I'll try.
Can you send an email?
I will happily send an email to invite everyone, and I will also post it as a potential meeting, just in case we have a quorum.
No, you sent me an email, we never connected. Department of Revenue or Local Services, you wanted me to talk to somebody?
I also sent Rick Kingsley an email with all the phone numbers. I don't think John's connected with him yet either.
Nope.
Rick actually came in last week again for further analysis and interviews pertaining to our current budget process and how things are going. Liz, do you remember what he spoke with you about?
Yeah, just the process of how the budget should go and who should start the budget and how we're not doing it that
So
way.
he wanted to focus his analysis on that. He thought that would be most helpful to us. And he spoke with pretty much all finance, between finance committee, treasurer's office, the accountant's office. He spoke with Liz, he spoke with myself. Don't remember if he spoke with anyone.
Did you want him to see me and John?
I gave him your phone numbers
Okay.
today.
Do you want to move into,
We can postpone them again if you like, if you don't want to do them today.
do what?
The executive sessions.
Are they going to be long?
Not necessarily.
I wondered if you wanted to, if you had anything for your town administrator report.
Let's see. You know what, I don't think so. I think most of the stuff, even just talking about, I guess I can talk a little bit. We had a department head meeting last week. We passed out some more materials. Last week we talked about public records requests. We've been getting inundated with public records requests from both constituents and large bodies such as WGBH, and also we got another one from a professional body last week for other documents. Not sure what the increased interest of public records requests is lately, but everyone who attended the department heads meeting has the information on public records law now and has information as far as, you know, what their requirements are to release things and their abilities to provide a written estimate of costs and how long they have to comply and all the information that pertains to that. That was last week. We also discussed it, you know, whether or not these types of pieces of information were helpful. After that meeting, we had our public safety meeting, which we always have after our department head meeting monthly. That involves the highway superintendent, the fire chief, the police chief, myself, the health agent, and the emergency management director now, which is Dawn Snyder. Sorry, Dawn. So we met as a group and we started talking about where we are in that planning and talked about moving forward and talking about a little bit each month. We also had a presentation from a woman who represents EAP, the employee, I think it's awareness project, but don't quote me on that. It's provided to us through our MEGA affiliation. She did the 15-minute presentation at the beginning of the last department head meeting, provide information for all the department heads to pass on to the employees so that they had information. It includes information on counseling and,
That all part of the wellness stuff.
yes. And a lot of it is no cost to the employees. There's also discounts there for health clubs and other associated things. That was last week. My new assistant started last week as well, Kevin. He's already been working by himself a couple days. He's doing a very nice job. He's caught us up on most of the minutes. As of by next week or the next meeting, we'll be caught up with all the minutes. And with this laptop that we were able to find in a closet that hadn't been used in numerous years, we are now able to take minutes during our select board meetings and bring us into the 21st century.
That's the laptop?
This is the laptop, and by the 21st century, I mean about 6 years old, but we're working with what we have, so. As long as we have a keyboard plugged in, I can use the letter R.
All right. Our next meeting is September 23rd. If you need a new performance evaluation form, please ask Heather for one, but we have the highway superintendent's.
I need one.
Highway superintendent, you might need two. Highway superintendent's performance evaluation.
Send the link out.
Okay. And October 7th is the police chief. On the 23rd, we also have the public hearing for charter to Comcast cable transfer. The 30th is still, is it tentatively or is that the meeting?
That's the meeting.
We have a meeting on September 30th with all the other boards and public to talk about the regionalization of services with the Hoyle Building Department. And is the October 21st actually our town meeting, or is that tentative?
It's up for the board to decide, but that is the date that would probably be best suitable. I had a discussion with Vicki last week, Donna, and also the town clerk, and we have to have a vote prior to October 31st pertaining to the busing fees. We have to create the ability to collect the fees and spend the fees. And we need to do most of this before October 31st so Vicki can actually move forward with getting things certified.
So I guess I would accept a motion to make October 21st our special town meeting.
What night, what day?
Tuesday. That's when we normally have our meeting.
We can have that here or at school?
At the school, where we normally have it. I have to continue, of course, making sure that it's available at the school. I didn't call them.
Basketball hasn't started yet.
October, what, 21st?
October 21st. And at what time is that?
7 usually.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you need a motion to do that or no?
Yes, please.
I would accept a motion to make October 21st at 7 p.m. at the Norris School special town meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So at this, what?
What else do you have?
2 executive sessions.
Before we go into executive session, John, we talked about, as a board to, start looking at how people are doing financially. When do you want to start that?
Oh, the finance process? The budget
Yeah,
process?
just reviewing how the budgets are going.
Okay. I do that every time we get a report, and I have it up here. Figuring if we had time, we could go over it. Let me pull it back up. There's only a couple departments that are going slightly over. 2 months into it, we should be at like 17%. And most of them, including the big departments, the fire, the highway and all, they're doing fine on their budgets. There's a couple small items on here that I looked at earlier this afternoon. The reserve fund is pretty much shot 3/4. Let me see if I can bring the other one up. It was the I highlighted them, but then I lost a highlight when I saved them. But the major departments are doing good. Hampshire operating is at 25%, so they're over about 7%. Highway is right on the target or a little less than they should be, so is the police and the fire. Park commission wages are at 44%. but they were talking about that, recently. But besides that, everybody seems to be right on target or below. So every time I get them, I review them, so if you want me to do that continually.
Yeah. The other thing, that's why I asked you to do that, but the other thing I was gonna bring up is, this is a year where, we need to start negotiating 3 contracts,
Okay.
and, which one? Police, fire, no, 4, police, dispatch, highway. And usually, we need, the finance committee needs those numbers, but, in years past, it's been 6 months after they've been getting renewed or seriously thinking, but I think this year here, we should get a notice, and probably after the first year, that's should be one of our major jobs, get that resolved.
When did they come up for renewal, Jack?
They're on one?
2015.
Oh, what month?
No, June.
June?
June 30th is the last day.
Okay, so
This year.
July 1 is a new contract period, so we'd hope to have it done before then.
Well, I would too, yeah.
Now, do they come one after the other, or do we?
They're all time, they brought them all at the same time.
That's probably a good thing.
Now, the other thing too is, we should be trying to talk to the Norris, because theirs comes off, their husband is in the same sector as ours, and we should be, not that we have a say on it, but we used to have, members go to meetings and have be able to do.
That would make sense. I mean, Norris is a budget that, use lack of a better word, control. New Hampshire it isn't. But, so if they have a contract that's way out of whack, it's only gonna hurt them in the end, because it has to come from somewhere else. So if we're involved in the process, hopefully we can keep them informed.
I just wanna get those things out there, so we have them on the radar. I don't think we need them dated yet, but we should remember that, this is a year we need to take care of those.
And those are important, especially with the budget implications.
That's it,
Mm.
I'll leave you alone.
Okay, so we're going to enter into executive session for 2 reasons. One, under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. And all 3 of those, Heather?
6 and 1, anyway.
What about 3?
Well, I'm sorry, 1 and 3. 6, I think I just got excited and wrote the number 6 again.
Okay, so also under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. And number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. By roll call vote.
Paul,
Wolf, aye.
Martin, aye?
We will not be coming back into open session.